Today we're addressing Los Padrinos, or Barrio Los Padrinos, or BLP for short, which is a smaller gang rooted in Compton and Lynwood, California. But in LA County, numbers don't mean much if the members aren't active. But when it comes to the case of Barrio Los Padrinos, they're one of the most active and ruthless gangs in the east side of Compton. This gang, they're known to engage in daily wars with numerous other gangs, daily shootouts, and a few high-speed chases throughout the city. Because of these factors and a lot more, through the years, this gang has been in numerous headlines for its infamous activities throughout LA County. So they definitely have a story to tell. Yeah. All right. Welcome to Cali's Most Dangerous. Let's get into it.
Robbery suspects in Lynwood. On August 30th, deputies say that they were flagged down the corner of...
They just came up this way right here when I was walking into the yard, and they just opened up. There's no other way to put it. They just drove up like this, slowed down a little, and bah, 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 bah.
There's a nigga that was in a high speed right here. He's tripping.
On October 30th of 2012, Carlos Albino, his brother and a friend stopped at a gas station along Interstate 15 in Baker, California. A short time after that, a Honda Civic pulls into the station. Albino noticed the Honda's muffler was dragging on the ground, so he walked over to the Honda to tell the occupants. Little did he know, what he thought was going to be a brief conversation was about to go south quickly. Once he approached the car, tensions rose quickly when a group in the car found him mentioning the muscler disrespectful. This was followed by an intense argument, which escalated into a scuffle. Meanwhile, Albino's friend saw him engage in a physical struggle with one of the occupants. Later identified as known BLP member Reginaldo J. Acosta, also known as Lil Tricks. And during the struggle, Acosta grabs Albino's jacket as Albino tried to run away. He then pulls out a gun and shoots Albino 3 times. Another occupant in the Honda, later identified as another BLP member, Edwin Guerrero, stood by with the windshield cleaner in his hand. And after the shots, Acosta and Guerrero got into the Honda and sped away from the gas station. A gas station attendant called emergency personnel who transported Albino to a hospital where he was treated for gunshot wounds to his neck and his shoulder. Meanwhile, down the road, Donald Smith and his adult grandson, James E. Perez, stopped in Smith's Toyota Highlander sports utility vehicle in a vacant lot just off of Interstate 15, also near Baker. They were on their way from Orange County, California to Utah for an elk hunting trip. But the two, they had been driving for a couple hours at that point and wanted to take a small break to refresh for the rest of the trip. While in the lot, Smith and DePerez got out of the Toyota, stretched their legs, and began to eat a snack. Everything was going as planned, but about 10 minutes later, a Honda Civic passed them, turned around, and stopped approximately 30 to 50 feet away, followed by Acosta, Guerrero, and another passenger later identified as Ana Dimas getting out of the Honda and approaching Smith and DePerez. Acosta told Smith and DePerez his grandmother was dying and needed to get a ride to Vegas. But Smith refused, telling Acosta they had a destination they had to get to and they didn't have enough time. And after asking again and receiving another negative response, Acosta reaches to his waistband, pulls out a gun, and told Smith and DePerez they were going to give his group a ride. Smith, he initially got into the driver's seat, but Acosta told Smith to give the car keys to Dimas. So Dimas got into the driver's seat, and Smith took the front passenger seat as Acosta pointed his gun at DePerez's face and told him to get into the Toyota. DePerez, Guerrero, and Acosta sat in the rear bench seat, with DePerez behind Smith, Guerrero in the middle, and Acosta behind Dimas. Dimas drove the Toyota in the northbound Interstate 15 towards Las Vegas, while Acosta, he continued to point his gun at Smith. And while the nervous hostages sat in fear, Acosta said to Smith, "I'll do you a favor. I'll let you live, but you gotta do me a favor and give us $500. So Smith, who had a large amount of money in his pockets for the trip, gave Acosta a few bills. But Acosta, he kept demanding more, shaking down Smith on more than one occasion for the money in his pockets. Smith, annoyed by the blatant robbery, asked Acosta why he had to take money from hardworking people. In this statement, it only angered Acosta, which caused him to mention that Smith and DePerez would have more issues if his grandmother had died in Vegas. Saying to Smith, "You've already lived a long life, and your grandson's young. Do you really want to take that away from him?" All this went on for about 15 minutes into the drive. And sometime in between that conversation, the glove department in front of Smith opened suddenly, which causes a number of items to fall out, including Smith's unloaded Smith & Wesson airtight revolver, which is in a small case. Smith notices this and kicks the revolver under his seat. Later, Smith, while the group was distracted, picks up the revolver and puts it in his pocket. And later down the line, while Acosta continued to demand money, he eventually put his gun down to grab all the bills Smith had gave him. Seeing his chance, Smith grabs his revolver and points it at Acosta. Acosta and Guerrero then tried to grab the revolver but failed, so Acosta picks up his own gun. So Smith, he drops his unloaded revolver and reaches for Acosta's gun. The purses, he also attempts to grab Acosta's gun, as he attempts to pull the gun away so it's not pointing at Smith. And in between all that, Acosta fired, hitting the purses in the hand. As the struggle continued, Acosta continued to fire more shots. One hitting Smith's finger, and other bullets hitting the window, innocently behind Smith. All this was planned out as demons continued to drive along the freeway at a high speed. Meanwhile, Guerrero picked up Smith's revolver and tried to shoot, but after he realized the gun was unloaded, he began to beat Smith and the purses with the butt of the revolver. At some point, Smith and the purses managed to turn Acosta's gun around and it went off, hitting Guerrero in the finger, which causes Guerrero to scream, "I've been hit! I've been hit!" And in a panic, Demons loses control of the Toyota and it drove off the freeway and into a gravel truck runway area, followed by the Toyota hitting a gravel berm and stopping. Acosta, Guerrero, and Demons then quickly get out of the Toyota and run away, followed by the purses calling 911 and Smith flagging down a passenger truck driver, who stopped and rendered assistance. Emergency personnel arrived and transported Smith and the purses to a medical center in Las Vegas. On top of that, California Highway Patrol officers located Guerrero approximately half a mile away from the Toyota. And later that day, the officers found Acosta and Demons walking along Interstate 15 near the Nevada border. Here's the thing. While Smith and his grandson made it out of that situation alive, they didn't know how much danger they really were in. That's because just 2 weeks prior to their altercation, Lil Tricks, he set up a rival gang member before killing him in cold blood and was on a run and willing to do anything to stay free, even take another life. Today we're addressing what exactly played out that sent Lil Tricks on his murderous spree and a lot more intense situations. But to fully address some more intense stories, we first have to get into the history of BLP. History of Barrio Los Padrinos.
Shots fired. Deputies involved in the shooting. They're exchanging gunfire with the suspects.
This is BLP member Rascal. This little nigga is 13 years old. Boy, at 13, I was still playing with Legos and shit. I ain't had no pussy yet. I don't even think I'd been to a party at that point. But this little nigga, he was a full-fledged gang member for a couple years at his age. Been arrested a couple times already and was leading the Compton police on a high-speed chase throughout the city up until he crashed his car into a building. And even while being arrested, Rascal still taunted the cops while throwing up his hood. Shit, even when he was being arrested, he knew the whole procedure. Arms over your head and legs crossed. This definitely wasn't this little SA's first rodeo. Matter of fact, he's following a long line of BLP members who were known for their activities like this and much more violent acts in the city of Compton. Rascal was put on BLP at 9 years old. My question is this: in gang culture, is this a normal occurrence or common to see kids banging before they reach double digits? And if so, why? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about that. Anyways, BLP's history can be traced back over 4 years in both Compton and Lynwood area, due to this gang being on the borderline of both cities. During the 1980s, Compton was in the midst of a deadly transition as the addictive drug crack cocaine took over the Los Angeles County drug trade, and ruthless gangs rushed to build their drug enterprise. BLP, however, they weren't quite formed yet. Initially, they started off as a group of troubled youth who ended up at a juvenile center together, and through their close ties to the area and the growing need for both identity and protection, BLP was formed. From their foundation, this gang, they moved on their own accord. They didn't answer to anybody. To go deeper into that, the gang's name, translating to the Godfathers, reflects its members' self-perception as influential figures within their community. The gang's presence in both Compton and Lynwood contribute to the complex tapestry of street gang dynamics in Southern California, where most gangs have unique traditions and characteristics, which for BLP's case is one of the main reasons they're still active today, attracting many young youth looking for leadership, guidance, and a search for identity and belonging. This search, unfortunately, on more than a few occasions, has led many youth to prison, death, or life-changing experiences. And you don't have to look any further than young BLP member Rascal. But an even bigger and more tragic example of this playing out is with Lil Tricks. If y'all been keeping up so far, you already know he was on a run when he was arrested on the California-Nevada border. But let's get into what played out that led to him being on a run in the first place. On October 17th of 2012, Lil Tricks, Juan Sanchez, and Sanchez's brother attended a party. Several people at the party, including Lil Tricks and Sanchez, used crystal meth. So eyewitnesses say the night was going well. Most people there were high, strung out of their minds, or paranoid, which is often a lethal combination, especially in LA. Angelo Artuno was a member of the Compton Barrio 132nd Street gang. He arrived at the party sometime that evening. And while at the party, Sanchez saw Artuno put a ball of crystal meth into his pocket. So the two talked and ended up doing meth together. As the night played out, Artuno noticed that Sanchez's brother had taken Artuno's car, which worried Artuno because there were drugs in the car. But Sanchez, he reassured him that he would get his car back as soon as possible and not to worry about it. So as the party ended, Acosta, once again known as Lil Tricks, called his friend and asked her to pick him up. Yanez then picks up Lil Tricks, Sanchez, and Artuno in her black two-door Ford Explorer and drove them to a residence in Compton. Inside Yanez's residence, Lil Tricks, Sanchez, and Artuno made phone calls, followed by the group getting high off meth and listening to music. While Lil Tricks assured Artuno that he would get the car back the following day. So on the early morning of October 18th of 2012, under the impression that they were helping Artuno get his car, Yanez again drove Lil Tricks, Sanchez, and Artuno in her Ford Explorer. Artuno was in the front passenger seat, Sanchez sat behind Yanez, and Lil Tricks, he sat behind Artuno. Yanez followed Lil Tricks' directions and drove into a parking lot of an apartment complex in the city of Southgate. And as Yanez and Artuno moved to exit the vehicle, Lil Tricks reaches into his waist, grabs a pistol, and shoots Artuno twice in the head. Lil Tricks, he then unlatches Artuno's seatbelt and pushes Artuno's body out of the front passenger door, followed by him placing his long barrel chrome .357 caliber revolver in his waistband. The shooter shocked Yanez and Sanchez as they both sat frozen in their seat. So Lil Tricks yelled to Yanez, "Drive, stupid, drive!" And while reversing out of the parking lot, Yanez drove over Artuno's body. And as Yanez drove, Lil Tricks told Sanchez, "Be cool and relax, dog." Sanchez responded that he was cool, but still asked why Lil Tricks shot Artuno. But Lil Tricks, he didn't respond. He just kept looking forward in silence. Police recovered Artuno's body at the Southgate apartment parking lot. A medical examiner determined that Artuno's killing was a homicide and that the cause of death was from multiple gunshot wounds to the head. Given the trajectory of the bullets, the shooter was sitting behind and to the left of Artuno. After further investigation, which came with the use of surveillance cameras around the city, Yanez's Ford Explorer was impounded, and when she went to go pick up her vehicle, she was arrested. Artuno's blood was found on both the passenger door frame and the rubber trim located along the bottom of the passenger door of Yanez's vehicle. On top of that, gunshot residue was detected on top of the interior roof over the right passenger seat area. And during Yanez's interrogation, she told the police she didn't report the murder because she was scared, saying she was aware she was not supposed to snitch based on the rules of the street and knew that snitching was dangerous. After the murder, she moved from California with her children and was provided with relocation assistance from both the state and the sheriff's department. And later down the line, Sanchez was arrested and interviewed by police. And that's why he didn't report the murder. Sanchez said that he was scared and mentioned his daughter, saying that the paperwork on his participation in this case would verify that he snitched on Lil Tricks and put his life in danger. Ultimately, after statements from witnesses and gang members, ballistics evidence, and a thorough investigation by detectives, Lil Tricks was found guilty of the murder of Artuno and sentenced to 50 years to life in state prison. Once again, Lil Tricks' case, it gives another brutal example of how ruthless BLP members are known to be, especially when it comes to enemies and rivals. But this is only one of many cases that include BLP's daily ways. Some of these stories were just flat out too crazy to add on YouTube. But to address some other intense situations, we have to explain who BLP is today. Who are Barrio Los Padrinos?
Sheriff deputies surprised gang members in the middle of a drive-by shooting. A running gun battle followed. The deputies after the gang members.
Don't sleep on Lynwood, they been hood. You might end up hit if you're not good. Bars, nigga. Now, Compton and Lynwood are two smaller cities in Los Angeles County that house some of the most dangerous and militant gangs in the area. There's numerous Paru gangs, Compton Crips, and Mexican gangs that ring bells in the city, with gangs like the Ma Paru, Santana Block Compton Crips, and the Compton Barrio Tortilla Flats coming to mind when thinking about this area. But trust, it's many more deadly gangs that have developed deadly reputations throughout LA County, with BLP being a big example of this. Like I already mentioned, this gang is smaller compared to some of the other gangs in Compton and Lynwood. So they had to have militant members from this gang in order to stand on their own in one of the most deadliest parts of California. So there might not be a lot of people who've heard about them outside of their respected area, but with local civilians and law enforcement, BLP has been known for their brutal ways for a while at this point. Law enforcement agencies, they continue to monitor and address gang-related activities at BLP. Collaborative efforts between police departments, community organizations, and local governments aim to reduce violence and provide alternatives for adverse use in the BLP's area. But this gang has continued to grow throughout the years and still often engage in deadly violence with other rival gangs. Allies and rivals of BLP.
Ain't nobody hanging out. Nothing but smokers and fight sides over here. My shit. Look. Nothing but smokers and paisas. Fuck.
Barrio Los Padrinos are one of the bigger gangs in Compton and Lynwood area, but don't get that fucked up. This gang, you're gonna go to war with a lot of different gangs in the area and have numerous street stories about this gang's activity. When it comes to allies, they don't have too many. They have a neutral standing with the Toker 13s, but when it comes to rivals, they have a lot more. They have an intense beef going on with the Santana Block Compton Crips, with numerous shootings occurring on both sides. They also go to war with the Pomino Gangsta Crips. They also go to war with other Mexican gangs like the Barrio Paragons, Compton Barrio 132nd Street, the Compton Barrio 3s, and they have a long history of going to war with another street gang pretty much right across the street from them, being the Panic Street 13s. But the crazy example of this war played out in the 1990s. On Christmas Eve 1989, BLP member Carlos Flores and a fellow gang member went to a party in Compton, but finding it boring, he left at about 9 p.m. with another gang member, Raymond Vasquez. The two had been friends for 3 years and lived on the same block. Raymond, about 17 years old, had been a gang member for at least 3 years and was called Lil Man. And the two had a history of having each other's back and standing on business. Flores and Raymond had done graffiti together, tagging on rivals' hoods, and Flores had been with Raymond when he hit up or banged on different members, asking their gang affiliation and declaring head, BLP. Anyways, the two of them were gone from the party for about 2 hours. They cruised and played arcade games, then returned at about 11 p.m. But after a short time, they left again, this time with 3 females. Sylvia and Martha, each 16 years old, and Connie, 14 years old. Flores, he drove his blue Agrigo. Raymond sat in the front on the right, Connie between them, and Sylvia and Martha sat in the rear. They drove a short distance to Long Beach Boulevard to pick up another BLP member, Sparky, who got in the back seat. Flores, he then drives to Banning Street gang territory in Lynwood, California. It was about 11:20 p.m. at that point, and when they drove by a house on the corner of Banning Street and Peach, Sylvia says, "Look, there's some guys from Banning down the street." And without saying any words, Flores drove past the house, went to the corner, turned right, and turned right again. Connie asked Raymond where they were going, and he told her to ask Flores. So she did. But Flores, he didn't answer. Connie then asked another 4 or 5 times, but still gets no response. Soon enough though, the group knew exactly where they were going. As Flores again approached the corner house, he slowed, turned off his lights, and stopped in the driveway. After that, Raymond leaned out of his window and screamed, "Where you bought those from?" When there was no answer, he asked again, "Where you fools from?" And eventually, one of the nearby men answered, "Banning Street." So Raymond replied, "Banning," followed by him shouting, "Barrio Los Padrinos," pulling out a .38 caliber pistol, extending both arms through the window, and firing 6 shots. 2 bullets hit Antonio Gonzalez, one in the chest, one in the stomach, and he unfortunately died within 3 hours. Another 2 bullets hit Martin Camarena, but he thankfully survived. But a third man, Solomon Rodriguez, was about 25 feet away from the car when the shooting started. He tried to run and duck for cover, but he was also shot twice. Flores immediately drove away from the scene, and after a short distance, he turned his lights on. There was little conversation, but Sylvia and Raymond did talk about the shooting. According to Martha, Raymond was scared and couldn't believe he did it. After the shooting, Flores drove to a park in Bell's Garden, stopped briefly, and then took each of them home. Flores, he was later arrested and interrogated by detectives. And while asked why he hadn't called the police during a month before he was arrested, Flores said that he had forgotten about the shooting because he was too busy working. Also on cross-examination, when asked if he was surprised by Raymond's first shot, Flores responded, "Yeah, I thought he was gonna shoot once, but he shot he shot more than once." In the end, Carlos Flores and Raymond Vasquez were convicted for the murder of Antonio Gonzalez and was sentenced to life in a state prison. Definitely rest in peace to Gonzalez. While this murder happened over 30 years ago, to die like that is always a tragic way to go out. This situation played out in the 1990s, but there have been more than a few other members who have intense stories attached to their history. Prominent figures. Once again, while BLP's hood, it isn't as big compared to a lot of other prominent gangs in the area, they still have more than a few members who have made a lot of noise for their gang throughout the year. But first off, I found a member who's no longer with us, so definitely rest in peace to Lil Weevil. Y'all let me know in the comments if any of the members are no longer with us. Let their names live on. When it comes to other prominent members, a couple of them, Luke Demon, Sharky, Casper, and young BLP member Rascal, who recently made headlines after being in a high-speed chase. They also have some rappers who've been putting in work for the game when it comes to the music industry. P-Face Baby is an up-and-coming rapper from BLP. This nigga is hard too. Real-life stories in his flows, but it's combined with the funny, catchy flow. He doesn't remind me of any other rappers out here, which is honestly a great thing. That means bro is unique. And he makes some fire tracks. Don't believe me? Check out songs like True Story, Hot Topic, and Why You BS, and let me know what you guys think. Also, if there's any other rappers out there, y'all go ahead and mention their names in the comments. Let's get their music heard. Only if they're hard, man. Don't be posting that whack shit on here. Current state of Barrio Los Padrinos. When it comes to the current state of BLP, today, while they aren't as active as they were in the early 2000s and 1990s, they still stand as one of the more active gangs in the East Compton, Lynwood area. Over the years, BLP has been through several gang injunctions, received a lot of pressure from law enforcement to cease their activities, but this gang has still grown and even got to the point where they have a presence in other states, like Texas. But y'all let me know in the comments if they're active in any other states. Anyways, that's it for Barrio Los Padrinos. Y'all got any crazy stories about these guys? Any close calls? Also, did I miss anything? Did I get something wrong? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video or you're part of the Danger Gang. Y'all stay safe and dangerous out there.